Hello, my name is Dylan Lurie of Boxing Debate TV, and welcome to my inaugural podcast. Super excited to join YouTube and for everyone to get a taste of my covering of boxing and everything. In this podcast, we're going to be discussing current events, debates, and even having some special guests join us down the road every week to give you guys all sort of insights. Shout out to our sponsor, Next Gen Athletics, the go-to for developing student athletes on and off the field. So shout out to Next Gen Athletics. So today we're going to start our first segment with a recap of last Saturday night, and that was a fireworks show. It was a fantastic performance from both fighters, Deontay Wilder and Tyson Fury. It will go down as an all-time great fight. And there was not really a whole lot of boxing. It was more of just a brawl. Fury got the stoppage win in round 11, knocked him out clean like he said he was going to do, and Deontay Wilder went out on a shield. You know, he fired Mark Breland because he threw in the towel, and Malik Scott was not going to do that. He sat in the corner and watched as Deontay got battered around the ring. But you've got to admire the toughness of both fighters, right? Tyson Fury showed the toughness. He got knocked down twice in the fourth round alone. Stayed in it, came back, even won round number 5. So it's things like that that really to show the heart and determination of fighters. Even Deontay Wilder showed the heart of a warrior. You know, honestly, from round 3 on, including round 4 where he knocked Fury out twice, he was getting hit with some big and clean shots with those 12-ounce gloves, and they don't feel like 12-ounce gloves when you're in the middle of it. He's getting hit with these big hooks and big straight rights, and he just battles and stays on his feet until ultimately he got cleaned out in round 11 by a big right to the ear. And 99% of people wouldn't have even got to that point, but that punch takes everybody out. And Deontay showed the toughness. He just throughout the entire fight. But I will say this, taking away from the fight, his revamped style, he looked like he learned how to box a little bit. Malik Scott said that he had turned Wilder into, to a little bit of a boxing kind of guy. We've always known Wilder to be this big punching brawler sort of fighter. But today was different, or not today, my bad. Last Friday or last Saturday night was different. Wilder came out in the first round and established his jab and kept Fury at range. Obviously, the weight did not help him. He put him down twice with some clean shots, but even when he was fighting at 215, 220, he was able to hit that shot. This extra weight that he's put on is just weighing him down. Like, I don't see any sort of help that this weight has done for him. Both fights he's against Fury, these last two, he's fought over 230 pounds. That's not his style. He's more of a 220, 215, maybe at the most 225 kind of fighter. And he fought Fury at 231 and 238 pounds, and it really didn't help him out. But I will say, the first round of that fight, and even halfway through the second round, the way he established his jab really made Tyson Fury be like, okay, I'm in a different kind of fight. Something he really was not used to. Like the first fight against Wilder, Wilder was just trying to drop bombs on him. It would be jab, bomb, jab, bomb. This fight, you knew Wilder was trying to set up the right hand with the jab to the body. He kept going down to the body and back up. But, with all that, he tired out by round 4. By round 4, when he tried to put Fury away, he was exhausted. And when it came time to put him away in round 5, Fury somehow had a second wind and Wilder was gassed. The weight did not help him at all. And to be honest, the fight should have been stopped at about round 7 or 8. Wilder used pure heart to stay up and stay alert, and even land some shots on Fury that made him go, oh, okay, he's still got some power left. But in reality, he was just getting battered around the ring, hooks and jabs and big body shots, and leaned on by 277-pound Tyson Fury. I mean, that's a big joker. He came in at 277 pounds. That's the heaviest heavyweight to ever win a heavyweight title, or to defend a title, I should say. And his tank to go along with being 277 pounds is absolutely remarkable. And Wilder at 238 pounds is gassing out. It's weird because Fury has this weight and such an awkward sort of stature. Because it's not like he has these big old muscles or big muscles that weigh him down, like Anthony Joshua, so to say. His weight is in this dad bod. or his sort of non-athletic looking frame. But he doesn't tire out. He looked like in round 11, he was as fresh as he was in round number 2. And remarkably, that helps him, helps him win the fight. And for Wilder, he got his bench press up to 350 pounds, was doing all these weights, and the oxygen was just stripped from him. By round 4, he looked gassed, was breathing straight out of his mouth, was dragging across the ring, still throwing with all the heart he had left, but his conditioning was terrible. So after the recap of the fight, now we have to think, what's next for both of these guys? Well, I'll tell you this. Anytime Deontay Wilder fights is going to be a big fight, regardless of the opponent. It does not matter who it is, where it is, what time it is. It does not matter. Deontay Wilder has what I like to call one-hitter quitter power, and fans pay to see that. They want to see that. He is still a huge money fight. Take away Tyson Fury, and people will see, oh, his record. He has 2 losses and a draw. He's only lost to one man in his 13 years of a boxing career. He's only lost to one man professionally. What can you take away from that? That means any other fighter in the world probably doesn't beat Deontay Wilder. So that puts into question, who should he fight next? I think it's pretty simple. The general public think the loser of AJ Usyk 2 he should fight. I don't think so. I think he should stay in the States and fight Andy Ruiz. He needs a win under his belt. His last 2 fights have been losses. He needs a confidence booster. I think that's a fight he thinks he can win, but I think Andy Ruiz poses a great challenge. Andy Ruiz has fantastic hand speed, able to throw combinations. I don't know if the weight loss helped him. The Areola fight, he got put down once, but his conditioning was much better. Andy Ruiz is a former world champion. Knocked out Anthony Joshua at Madison Square Garden to take most of the title, except for the WBC. I think this is a huge money fight, especially if you want to do it in Texas or Las Vegas or even Los Angeles. That's a huge money fight. DAZN or PBC would take. I believe PBC would take the fight. Andy Ruiz is someone who has knockout power in both hands, as we saw against Joshua. And time again, Andy Ruiz has shown that hand speed and the quick combinations, the 1-2 followed with a hook, he can stay in any fight. That's an interesting fight. You want to go even further. Let's say Usyk beats Joshua again in the rematch. Anthony Joshua, Deontay Wilder would be a fireworks show. AJ is definitely the better, quote-unquote, to say, boxer of the 2. But Deontay Wilder has the advantage in power. And I'm not saying Anthony Joshua does not have power. But the power of Deontay Wilder it's like getting hit with a Mack truck. Tyson Fury said it himself. He wanted to feel the power of the quote-unquote Alabama Slammer in the first fight. Went to block a jab, and he thought he broke his hand. That is the power Deontay Wilder possesses in both hands. I mean, he's knocking people out and knocking them down by hitting their gloves. He has such brute force in that right hand. But then you've got Anthony Joshua, who, it would be a great test for him because everyone's like, oh, Anthony Joshua has a bad chin. And I admit, I think he has a glass chin. He's been teed up a couple times. He wobbled a little bit in the Usyk fight. Got put down by Klitschko, put down by Ruiz multiple times. So his chin is definitely vulnerable. That's a winnable fight for both fighters. I think both fighters could win a knockout. I think AJ possesses more power than Fury, and Fury put Wilder out. But then again, AJ has never seen someone with the power of Deontay Wilder. The closest thing he's seen to that power is probably, I would have to say, Vladimir Klitschko. And Klitschko put him down. So could you imagine what would happen if a straight right from Wilder landed? That would put him out. So I think Deontay Wilder is still in great hands. I think the fight showed that he's definitely still a big money fight. He can last the distance. He just needs to lose some weight, fine-tune a couple things, and get healthy after this Fury fight before he makes a new fight. As for the other side, Tyson Fury, I believe his next move should obviously be his mandatory and Dillian White. That's a huge fight. Big UK fight, 2 British guys. White has needed a title shot for over 1,200 days now. Finally gets his title shot from the WBC. So I believe that, if as long as he takes care of business against Otto Wallin on October the 30th, that fight's a massive fight. I mean, I don't know how much of a chance White stands, but I don't think there's anyone more deserving of a title shot than Dillian White. You know, he was deserving a while back, and then he got knocked out by Pulev in pretty devastating fashion. Came back, beat Pulev, became the mandatory again. So now he sits at the spot where he is the mandatory for the WBC title. So when I look at that in the grand scheme of things, that's who I think Fury should fight next. But then his father comes out, John Fury, and he starts talking about, well, for me, it's Usyk or nothing. Well, Usyk has a whole other fight to fight. He still has to beat Joshua again, and that's not going to be an easy task. Because if Joshua has any sort of brain, or his trainer has any sort of brain, he's not going to go in there and try to outbox Usyk again. He's going to try to rough him up and land a big right and just beat him up for 12 rounds. That's what Joshua should do. But if he's not smart, he'll try to outbox him again and get worked by the best technical boxer probably in boxing right now, in Alexander Usyk. But I don't think Tyson Fury should be waiting for either one of those two. Tyson Fury should, his ring rust obviously showed in the last fight against Deontay Wilder. It took him about 3-4 rounds, even 5 rounds, to get settled in there. I know he put down Wilder in round 3, but he wasn't really relaxed or settled in until about round 3. 518 days since his last fight, he came out and he was rusty. So he definitely needs another fight in between the AJ Usyk winner for the undisputed. Why not fight White? White and you have been going back and forth on Twitter for years, having beef. You guys talk a lot of crap to each other. Why not make the fight happen? You can finally shut him up, put him away for good. And as for White, you can finally beat Fury, who you've been nagging for a fight for all this time. And now you're mandatory for him. So either he has to vacate as long as you take care of business, or you two have to fight. That's the fight that makes the most sense to me. But touching back on another point, I'll touch real quickly on this Otto Wallin Dillian White fight. This is a massive fight as well. The O2 going to be a great venue for the fight. I don't see this fight going the distance, personally. Otto Wallin's a good boxer. He gave Fury a lot of issues in their fight, I believe back in 2019. Cut him open, had a big cut. Fury had to battle through that. So there's a lot of things that could happen in this fight. Otto Wallin will not go down without a fight. This is definitely no easy fight for Dillian White, just to say, oh, here I come. Now's my time. White is going to have to lock in. He's going to have to close the distance because Wallin's a big 6'6" southpaw. That can cause a lot of issues. He's going to have to close the distance and hit that big right hand. It's a hammer. It's really a sledgehammer. Not a whole lot anyone can do about it. Once you get hit with it, it will rock you. Joshua got rocked with it in round 2 against White. But White's got to prove that he's not only, he not only needs to win the fight, but he needs to prove that he is worthy enough to fight someone with the skills of Tyson Fury. Because right now, I don't think a lot of people are convinced he can even put up a fight. Including myself, I don't think Dillian White poses more of a threat than Otto Wallin did back in 2019. And this revamped Fury that is now trained with Sugar Hill, I seriously don't think it poses any sort of threat. So when you look at the grand scheme of things, all in all, Dillian White has to not only win, but he needs to perform as well. We'll be right back after a short break, and we're going to touch on the big fight coming up in the undisputed super middleweight between Canelo Alvarez and Caleb Plant. We'll be back in 1 minute. It's time to start our next segment. Next segment will be Canelo and Caleb Plant. I think this is a fantastic fight. I don't think people give Caleb Plant enough credit for being a great fighter. He was a Golden Gloves champ, I believe 2010 or 2011, I should say. Very technical fighter, and he's long for super middleweight. You don't see many super middleweights, or even middleweights, or light heavyweights over 6 foot tall, and Plant's 6'1". He's got that extremely long reach. That'll be an issue for Canelo. I'm really excited for this fight. I think this fight has the potential to go down as maybe fight of the year, because both guys genuinely do not like each other. You look at the build-up. Canelo Canelo countered him in the build-up. Tried to slap Canelo, Plant did, and Canelo countered him and cut his face open. And that only leads to problems. I thought the fight was going to get delayed when it happened. I think Eddie Hearn was feared of the same thing. But thank gosh it didn't. Both fighters are ready to roll. And this is the second undisputed title fight we've had this year. How exciting is this? The first one was back in May with Josh Taylor and Jose Ramirez at 140, where Taylor won the fight in the unanimous decision. Rightfully so. This is our second undisputed title fight of the year. I love undisputed title fights. Everyone's got everything to lose and everything to gain at the same time. Canelo's got all the belts except for, I believe it's the IBF, which Plant holds right now. Plant 21-0. Canelo 56 wins. He's a beast. Canelo Alvarez right now is the number one pound for pound fighter in boxing. And when you look at someone with the skills of Canelo, the head movement, the defense, the counter punching, the jab, the big right hand, and most importantly for him, his granite chin, he seems as if he's almost unbeatable. But then, on the contrary, you've got someone like Caleb Plant, who is very good at range, can also fight inside if he needs to, can set up a really good jab, and he's very, very technical. And you saw, something similar. I like to, relate fights to one another. I look at a fight we saw earlier this year between Manny Pacquiao and Yordenis Ugas. Caleb Plant, to me, fights a lot like Yordenis Ugas. And Canelo, to an extent, fights like Manny Pacquiao. The short flurries, can get in real close, really has to close the distance. He's undersized. While Caleb Plant, fights like Ugas, picking his shots to counter punch, looking to hit the hook off the entrance from his opponent, looking to really extend and set up the jab at range. That can be a problem for Canelo. I can't remember in recent times when Canelo's fought a fighter this long. Golovkin was pretty long, and that was a very difficult fight for Canelo. Many people thought he lost the fight. I thought he lost the first fight to Golovkin, but that's a totally different story that we'll have to touch on another day. But overall, it's going to be a very good matchup. Both great counterpunchers, and they don't like each other. That's what makes boxing matches so much more fun than any other sport. Because when there's two people that do not like each other in the build-up, it makes for a very, very interesting fight. So I'm extremely excited for that fight in particular. And our next fight of this segment, oh boy, this fight is a PBC ESPN crossover, November the 20th in Las Vegas. We've got Terrence Crawford against Shawn Porter. Now, I don't think people understand just how good Shawn Porter is. His record may say, oh, he's 31-3 with a draw. Well, look at who his losses are. He lost to Errol Spence by split decision. That's a great fighter, undefeated. Many people have him pound for pound top 10. And two undefeated fighters at the time with Kell Brook and Keith Thurman, majority decision and unanimous decision. Both, and he was competitive in all three of those fights. It's not like he got shut out or anything. He was winning rounds against these guys. And Keith Thurman was a great fighter at the time. He confidence lost a little bit to Manny Pacquiao. Kell Brook, before he got beat by Bud Crawford, fantastic fighter. And Errol Spence speaks for himself. And this was before the car crash, too. So Spence was really at the top of his game. It's a southpaw and orthodox fight. It's going to be about whoever sets the jab up better, in my opinion. I think Crawford is fancied in this fight because Crawford really sets up his big left hand well with the jab. That's something I've always been interested in watching Bud Crawford. How long will it take Bud Crawford before he closes the distance and nails you to where you don't want to get out of your corner anymore? Fighting Terrence Crawford is like fighting someone from the Matrix. It's almost like fighting a heavier Lomachenko to an extent because Crawford creates angles so well and he's not afraid to stand and throw with somebody. And he has tremendous power in both hands. His hooks are fantastic. That lead right hook is something really to look out for. But one thing that people don't give Shawn Porter credit about is his chin. He has a fantastic chin. He's able to take punches and sit in the pocket and throw back. He's not afraid to trade, I should say. The keys to this fight. To me, the key for this fight for Crawford is staying at range and landing the big left hand, the big overhand left. That's his big and that's his meat and potatoes punch. That punch puts a lot of people out. It's retired a lot of his opponents. He's knocked out like his last 10 opponents or made him retire in the corner. And for Crawford to get inside, not let not letting Crawford, like I just said, land the big left hand. And this is such an interesting fight because both guys are going to try to establish their jab early, and whichever one can establish the jabs is going to be counterpunching. So I'm super excited. Both guys are really good. I think this is, in my opinion, number one in the division versus number three in the welterweight division. I think Porter's better than Ugas, so I'll have Porter at 3 and Ugas at 4 in the welterweight division. And this is a great title fight. I wish ultimately the winner would fight Errol Spence, but I know Crawford Spence will probably never get made until 2027. So we're gonna have to wait a long time for that one, which is really unfortunate because that's such a good fight that we may never get to see. We're gonna move into our final segment of this podcast, and this is a segment that are going to piss a lot of people off. It's going to piss all of you off, that are true boxing fans. Jake Paul, man, that word just makes you irritated, right? Jake Paul and Tommy Fury, they've been battling back and forth on Twitter, on Instagram. They've been making side bets. All these sort of things have come into, the play. Jake saying you're going to have to change your last name for a year. If you lose, I'll give you 500 grand. Jake's got the kind of money to talk like that and bet like that, and his pockets won't hurt. Well, some big news dropped earlier this week. Hall of Fame promoter Frank Warren announced that he is looking to make the Fury Paul fight either late November, early December. Boom! That's a Warren bomb. It's like the Woj bomb of boxing. I am super excited for this fight. I know a lot of people are like, oh, this is such a joke fight. What is Tommy Fury doing? If he has any aspirations of world champion, he shouldn't fight this clown. I don't look at it like that. I look at it like this. You've got one of the biggest social media stars in the US fighting one of the biggest media stars in the UK. Because Love Island's big in the UK. Not a lot of my US listeners know that. And Fury was on that show, meeting Molly May. This will be an interesting fight. I think it's both fighters' toughest test, personally. I am so excited for this fight. I think both guys have the potential to win the fight. And people are going to say, well, not even people, I will say, Tommy Fury is clearly the better boxer of the two. But I don't know. Jake Paul's got some big power in that right hand that could ultimately change the fight. He could really change the fight at any moment with the right hand. And it's crazy to think this little YouTube kid has a career in boxing, but don't get it mistaken. Don't get it mistaken at all. Tyron Woodley said it the best. He is a rich kid who has zero responsibilities, who can spend as much money as he wants on the best trainers in the world, best nutritionists in the world, and can spend all the time he wants. He has no responsibilities. And when you fight a guy like that, that is dangerous. That poses such a dangerous threat. And so Tommy Fury's going to have his hands full. This isn't a walk in the park for either guy. I think Fury will definitely be the betting favorite going into this fight. But I'll be curious to see how you guys see it in the comments. I think this fight is one that goes the distance. I don't think either guy is in danger of being knocked out. Some advantages, I think all the mental advantages go to Jake Paul. He's able to make these little side bets, and Tommy won't have his dad if this fight's in the U.S. He definitely won't have his dad because his dad's banned from the U.S. So that's his trainer. That's his head trainer, his dad. So his trainer will have to be Jorge Capitello, who's, I believe, is a great trainer as well, but he's not his dad. And John Fury loves his son. Will always coach his son to the best of his ability. So not having your head trainer there, we saw in his first fight, or his fight against Anthony Taylor, on the undercard of Paul Woodley. He struggled a little bit because he didn't have Big John with him in his corner. It's different when you have a completely different trainer in your corner. And that's a huge advantage for Paul. And I think Jake Paul is very good at the mind games. I don't know if Tommy Fury really plays the mind games. He seems like kind of a humble kid. And Jake Paul is the complete opposite of being humble. But as far as pure boxing ability, Tommy Fury has the clear advantage in boxing ability. His ability to throw quick combinations and move, and his head movement is pretty solid for a guy who didn't have many amateur fights, who's trying to one day be a world champion. But on the contrary, Jake Paul had 0 amateur bouts, and his first fight was against a YouTube star. His second fight was against Nate Robinson, a basketball player, and his third fight was against Funky Ben Askren, who's more into Bitcoin than he was MMA. And so his first and only real boxing test was Tyron Woodley, who put up a great fight. Many people thought Woodley beat him. I thought I thought Woodley knocked him down on the ropes, and the ropes held him up. So his chin got tested there, but he was able to, regain some stamina and get back in there. I think I can't wait, honestly, for this fight. It may sound dumb. A lot of the true boxing fans are going to give me a hard time about this. But in reality, Tommy Fury, Jake Paul, big social media star, who loses? The fans definitely don't lose. We get to see a treat because for the entire time those guys are in the ring, they don't like each other. They want to kill each other. Jake's going to be taunting him, trying to throw a big right hand, and Tommy will stand in there unfazed and shoot the jab out about 50,000 times. And then after the final bell, we'll see a winner. So I'm super excited for that fight. I'm going to close with this. I appreciate you guys so much for listening. Starting my own podcast and being a sports broadcaster has always been a dream of mine. I'm super excited to start this podcast and this journey with you guys. This will be live on YouTube going forward until probably January of 2022. We're going to try to make the move to Spotify or Apple Music, iTunes, I should say. So I'm super excited. Going forward, we're going to have some special guests, hopefully every Wednesday, to get some more insight, some interviews, and hopefully this podcast can take off to what I believe it can. And I'm excited to interact with you guys in the comments section. My email should be in my bio if anyone's interested in joining the podcast. And once again, thank you all so much. Everyone have a blessed night. God bless you all.